Was his name Dave? I gotta double check that because that's crazy if that's true. Yeah. Yeah, his name is Dave. Okay.
Ladies, gentlemen, and those with the good sense to do away with the whole notion, I welcome you to the premier audio medium for all your Fazbear entertainment needs. The Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast. Note, FFPP is not responsible for any loss of appetite, disinterest, dismemberment, or other legally classified statuses. So strap in and enjoy.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast. I'm your host with the toast, Right Host, here to talk about Five Nights at Freddy's, as we always do. Immediately, you see what we're doing today. Last week, we took a break for Secret of the Mimic, because of course we had to, but we are back to making the FNAF timeline. Last we left off, we were at 1985. If you have not seen part one, I'm not going to go over what we've discussed, because we've done like 6 slides of this, and that took like an hour. So I'm not going to go over them. Instead, we're just going to move forward. I realize now I misspelled desperate. You didn't see that. I didn't see that. Everything is fine. Yeah, we're just going to go right into it, I think. I guess I can read them just verbatim and we won't discuss, just so you know where this timeline is coming from, because it has been 2 weeks. Starting at pre-1979, something happens with the Mimic. Creation, accident, likely locked up afterwards until FNAF 6-ish. Fall Fest has been going on for at least 9 years. Fredbear's Family Diner is established sometime in the 70s. William and Henry are business partners, and William makes the Springlock suits. William has 3 kids, Michael, Dave, and Elizabeth. Michael spends his time fishing at the lake near the house. They live out in the woods, ? Henry has 1 kid, Charlotte. 1980 to 1983. William Afton creates the sister location Bunker to study animatronics and watch over Dave with psychic friend Fredbear. Dave Afton, the crying child, sees an employee being put in a springlock and mistakes it for a stuffing. William, through psychic friend Fredbear, reinforces that fear to keep Dave away from animatronics. He also has Michael Afton watch over him to just keep him safe, to which Mike bullies Dave out of frustration. During this time, Dave is shedding agony across Fredbear's and the newly opened Freddy's. Due to Fredbear's success, William and Henry appeal to investors to get funding for a new venture. They succeed and open the public company Fazbear Entertainment, which owns Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Henry builds a new set of animatronics, the original Fazbear Gang. Moving on to 1983. On Dave's birthday, Michael and his friends pick him up and make him kiss Fredbear, which result in the Big Bite, which would later be known as the Bite of 83. But after he died, Dave's life was so miserable and his fears were so great that in that moment he shatters and his soul spreads across the anchors he's placed, the parts of his agony that were shed throughout Freddy's and Fredbear's. This is the shatter victim theory. William takes him out of the hospital to recover at home, but that's the excuse, but actually to experiment and try to get a reaction out of him, try to bring him back. He tries to wake him by inducing horrible nightmares, doing the FNAF 4 nightmare chambers. When that fails, his body is buried in the woods in an unmarked grave to cover up the story and failure from the press, the Midnight Motorist lump. Dave's largest consciousness wanders around lost. Continued in 1983, Michael constantly sneaks out to visit Dave's grave and go to his favorite fishing spot to just contemplate what's happened. William wants to recreate the bite to see if he can save Dave in some way and plans the fun times. But they're too advanced, he can't build them on his own and without funding. So he appeals to more investors and funds Afton Robotics LLC. This is the sister location intro cutscene. But he still needs someone to help build it, and it's gotta be Henry. William kills Charlotte Emily outside of Fredbear's and leaves her in an alleyway. This closes Freddy's, and she possesses the marionette, this closes Fredbear's, she possesses the marionette, the restaurant's closed for good. William consoles Henry as his rock, and in his grief, Henry listens to William's out there plan to find a way to bring their kids back. Henry then builds the fun times for William. This is all a way to manipulate Henry to building the fun times. William comes back after killing Charlotte to find Michael has snuck out again. Had dare go visit Dave, all of this is his fault. He'll pay, and William still needs to continue those fear experiments. So William puts Michael in the FNAF 4 nightmare chambers as punishment to see what will happen. It's basically 2 birds with 1 stone. He gets to continue his fear experiments with a test subject that nobody's going to check up on, and he gets to punish his son for killing his other son. Circus Baby's Pizza World is going well and about to open, but Elizabeth, now without a babysitter because Michael's too busy being tortured in the nightmare chambers, keeps getting too close. The day before opening, she gets alone with Circus Baby, but the kidnapping ends up killing her instead. The plan is abandoned and Henry falls into grief after what the creations did. William notices the changes in Circus Baby and locks them in the bunker. He sees that her eyes shift. She talks like Elizabeth now. Is possession real? Can he study it? He needs more information. Cut to 1985, in which, in an effort to induce possession, William uses the Spring Bonnie suit to lure and kill Susie, Jeremy, Gabriel, and Fritz, stuffing their bodies into Chica, Bonnie, Freddy, and Foxy respectively. At first, there's no reaction, and people are starting to investigate the location. Desperate for a reaction, William forces one more child, Cassidy, into the Fredbear Springlock suit and activates the Springlock, horrifically killing them. There's still no visible possession, and Freddy's is closed down from the investigation. The shareholders retain all the assets, including the animatronics, where William can't access or observe them anymore. William manages to frame Henry for this to get him out of the way and make sure no one will believe him if he tries to tell the police about Circus Baby Pizza World. It's during this time where Charlotte as the marionette helps the MCI Kid Souls find their bodies, giving them their memories and helping them to possess the suits. They find Dave's spirit too, but with no body, he doesn't understand what's going on and sees the spirits as his friends, the plushies from his room. So yeah, that's what we took an hour to figure out last time we did this. If you want the full explanation for some of these points, go watch that podcast episode. But today, we are instead going to be talking about moving forward from here. So I mentioned in the last one that I think when they retained the assets, they likely left them in the restaurant, and those are the cutscenes we're seeing in FNAF 2. So let's go there, because now we have a stretch of time between 1985 to 1987. So I will duplicate this slide. The in-between time, when it's less crazy things happening. So during this time, so like I mentioned, this is the in-between times. This is before FNAF 2. So before FNAF 2 is kind of just a low period where William is studying, I think. Right? Like he's continuing to study the effects of the FNAF 4 Nightmare Chambers on Michael Afton to see what will happen. And he continues to study the effects of possession on Circus Baby. But it's just one experiment. He doesn't have access to his original Freddy's experiments anymore because the shareholders still maintain control. And I do believe it's still just in the Freddy's location. A lot of the times in this series, when a Freddy's gets shut down, the animatronics are shut down inside the restaurant. So they're all just there and he can't access them. And if he wants to access them, he needs to reorganize the business from bankruptcy. Basically, the shareholders are maintaining the assets of the business until eventually it can reopen. So if he reopens a restaurant, then he has access to these animatronics again. And this kind of goes into the what I was bringing up a couple times of like, why do Freddy's restaurants keep opening? Because we know William has some strange connection to the Bonnie character. We know this. But like Freddy, we don't need a Freddy's restaurant to continue these experiments unless there is some legal reason why. And I think this is what it's getting at. We know that it's a public company because he appeals to shareholders a couple times, right? And there is a type of bankruptcy with public companies where the shareholders maintain assets until the business is reorganized and redone, post-bankruptcy. So if Freddy's closed down and was a public company and they went with that bankruptcy, then those shareholders would maintain the assets of the company, aka William can't touch them, he can't observe them. So he goes back to the shareholders. He goes, hey, I know this was a huge failure, but realistically, the only reason things went bad was because some horrible man infiltrated the business and did horrible things. We had a good thing going. Let's get back there. Here's my plan. FNAF 2, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, the sequel. I think it's just called Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. But brand new versions of the animatronics. It's the characters you know and love, but the new ones are modeled to look just like the toys that kids still play with today. And they'll have a criminal database scanner to make sure no horrible people make it inside that building ever again. It'll be so super safe. It'll be so safe we can bring back the marionette that practiced from the original Freddy's. And look, I know you don't want the original Freddy's characters around, but if we bring them to the new restaurant, we can reuse them for spare parts. That way, we're being cost effective, we don't have the stigma of the old place, and it'll be super safe. And the shareholders approve of this, and Freddy Fazbear's Pizza begins to go under development. And now we get to 1987. Folks, if you've been in the community for more than a month, you know by now that I am partnered with Gamersupps. You can use code RYTOAST to typically get 10% off. But this week only, it started on the 21st, it ends on the 28th, this week only. All creator codes, including mine, RightHost, get you 21% off your entire order. Not just 10%, that's more than double. Frankly, it's more than the... I don't know if I'm supposed to say this, but frankly, it's more than the percentage I get when I want additional things. So, I'm going to be using this code sometime this week myself. It's a great deal. If you've been hesitant to try Gamersupps, like I've mentioned, there's free samples that you can get. You just have to pay for shipping. But if you've liked them, but you didn't want to pay I think it's $40 USD for a tub, 10% off is $36. 21% off gets you almost to $30 for a tub. And that's a great deal. Because again, these tubs have 100 servings in them. The caffeine ones are 100 milligrams caffeine per serving. I have maybe 2 servings of that a day. That's like 200 milligrams. It's about 2 cups of coffee. I'll have that around lunch. And because I do that 2 of those a day, my tubs last a month and a half, which is crazy. These tubs last forever. The non-caffeine ones, I have more than that. I think right now I've got Chug Juice. It's a mixed berry lemon lime flavor. It's really nice. They just came out with I think the flavor is called BBL, but it's like blueberry lemonade. I haven't tried it yet, but it sounds delicious. I'll let y'all know if I like it when I get it. But yeah, like I mentioned, this week only, 21% off, code RightHost. And most importantly, every time you use the code, it gives me money. Anyway, back to the podcast. Okay, that was a long one. I actually wrote 2 slides. So, 1987, baby. Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, the new one, is built. True to his word, William builds the toy animatronics, but the shareholders don't want his name attached to the place because of PR. So he's not the owner of the restaurant, publicly, anyway. This kind of does a few things to help us. In FNAF 2, we get that one phone call that I think is always necessary to explain in some way, where once things start going wrong, Phone Guy, or what is likely to be Ralph, mentions that they're trying to get into contact with the original owner of the restaurants, a place called Fredbear's Family Diner, which to me, this is saying that publicly, nobody knows that William Afton is working at this restaurant. Publicly, it goes, yeah, the last time we knew about the owner was back when Fredbear's was open, so I gotta go figure out where the owner of Fredbear's is. Nobody can find him. So to me, this is saying that this publicly traded company was like, we don't want your name attached to this place because your name is tainted from what happened at the last place. So because of that, he's more, I think William would more so just be working as a technician at this place. Similar to what we see in The Week Before, where in The Week Before, there is a character, I believe, named Dave. Hold on. Was his name Dave? I gotta double check that, because that's crazy if that's true. Yeah. Yeah, his name is Dave. Okay. Yeah, so in The Week Before, there's a character named Dave that Ralph frequently calls to help with the animatronics, because Dave is like a technician and he knows how to repair the animatronics. He's like he's described as like a grumpy guy who's incredibly intelligent with the animatronics. And I'm sorry, but when I heard there was a hard to talk to guy who was great with animatronics named Dave, my alarm bells went off. That's William Afton. Because again, William Afton uses fake names a lot, to the point where in The Silver Eyes, he uses the fake name Dave Miller. So, like, this isn't even the first time he would be using the fake name Dave. Which then points to him being alive for FNAF 1, by the way. Regardless, that's The Week Before. It's just, I'm trying to, the reason I bring this up is because there's precedent in this series for William Afton to be working for Fazbear's as a technician under a fake name. So I think something similar is happening in FNAF 2. Like, hey, your name is attached to these bad things, but we need your brain. So you're not William Afton, but you're allowed to work here. You know what I mean? So anyway, this is the situation. He takes pieces from the old animatronics and uses them with the toys, trying to see if there's any sort of reaction from either machine. Now, this is going into the idea that this is why parts of the old animatronics were used for the new animatronics, because not a lot of parts are like one-to-one. You know, the whole thing like, oh yeah, we keep them for spare parts. We tried to retrofit them, but it didn't work. Now we keep them for spare parts. I think this is William beginning to learn about Remnant, right? The idea of the scooper is really interesting with Sister Location, where it's this machine that melts down metal and re-injects it somewhere else. I think this FNAF 2 setup is the perfect opportunity for him to begin to learn about this process, for him to be like, oh, you can transfer a soul from one location to another if you transfer the metal that the soul is attached to. And the early stages of learning about this are these spare parts things. Again, he said he'd use spare parts to the shareholders, so he's likely also holding up that end of the deal. But it's the idea of moving spare parts of a haunted animatronic to a new animatronic is, in a way, a rudimentary remnant injection, right? It's taking haunted metal and moving its location to other metal. That being said, why do I think this happens? It comes down to the FNAF animatronics. The FNAF 2 animatronics, specifically the toys, are possessed the day you start working there. Like night 1, I think they are possessed and attacking you. Now, I know some people say they are just malfunctioning, but consider that Mangle can crawl on the ceiling. And in special delivery, we get an email specifically pointing out that, hey, how are we supposed to make Mangle crawl on the ceiling? There's no way we can do that. Which to me is pointing at, okay, Mangle could do that because Mangle was possessed. Or to all the other things about like how the toys are acting towards you. It's more aggressive. It leans more into possession. That being said, I don't think the toys are possessed by the Dead Child incident victims. Because that happens on, if the phone calls are live and we're getting them day after day, then the Dead Child incident happens on like night 4, I believe, night 5, and they're haunted night 1. So ghosts need to already be in the toys by night 1 or else. So that's my main thinking of why I think the missing child incident victim spirits are just being split into the toys. I think that's what's going on here. Some of their remnant is being put in the toys and the toys are reacting accordingly. Okay, so now on to the next bullet point. Like I mentioned, he works as a technician, doesn't notice their odd behavior at night. This is coming from my reasoning for the DCI, because it is worth pointing out that they are acting strange and reacting during the night shift, but he's not there during the night shift as far as we're aware, so he doesn't know that. From his perspective, they're just still not reacting, and he's trying to get some kind of reaction out of them while this new Freddy's location is still open. And he gets more and more desperate until eventually the DCI happens. He gets desperate enough for a reaction, so once again he dons the Spring Bonnie suit and kills 5 children right in front of the animatronics after hours. And that works. They react, they try to fight back, and he knows possession can be forced and manipulated. So this really just comes down to why the DCI happens and giving it purpose. Because as it stands in the story, it just kind of happens. But the bodies of the DCI aren't stuffed. They're just strewn about. And most of them are in front of animatronics. So my thinking is, if he's trying to get some kind of reaction out of the animatronics, he takes the trauma approach. He puts on the suit he wore when he killed them, and he kills children in front of them to see if they'll do anything. And that's when we get the Save Them minigame, where they do react. The marionette tries to get Withered Freddy to do something, but they can't. They can't save them. To the point where sometimes William Afton is in that minigame and rushes you and ends the minigame. I don't know how William Afton can defeat a, 8-foot animatronic bear. I don't know, maybe pushes over and runs. But, in that moment, William Afton wins. William Afton sees that possession is able to be made, able to be forced. And from that moment on, it's just, okay, how do I get access to these suits so I can pull them apart and see what makes them tick? So he wants to get the suits out of there, but the DCI was left out in the open. And note of the victims, their bodies were left out in the open and found immediately because of this investigation. So it's possible their spirits found rest. They didn't need to possess suits. They weren't stuck here. Their spirits weren't torn. They literally just were dead and moved on and passed on because, again, their bodies are out in the open. So the place is under investigation because of this. William Afton knows place is under lockdown. I shouldn't be able to get in there. I can't get in there. He needs somebody else to do his dirty work. He needs somebody else to go in there and take them apart and bring their metal back. In the meantime, during the day shift, there's a private party. But the animatronics are so out of control that at one point, an employee shines a flashlight at Withered Foxy, and Withered Foxy takes a big old bite out of his forehead. AKA the Bite of 87. If you're wondering why I'm so short, it's Withered Foxy. I actually made a whole video on that. I think it's literally like we were wrong about the Bite of 87 or something. It has to do with the week before. But like I said, I wrote 2 slides because there's a lot to talk about here. So the Bite of 87 happens. William still needs somebody to go to the location, take apart the animatronics, and bring back their metal. And luckily for William, he has someone who he's been torturing for, at this point, like 2 years. And is probably willing to do anything for him. So I just wrote the manipulation, right? Just, Michael, oh thank God, I got through to you. I'm trying to stop your nightmares, but I need your help. I know it's strange, but I think if you can disassemble the animatronics after your shift and bring them home, the nightmares will stop. I might even be able to save your brother. So, going to Michael's point of view right now. For the past 2 years, you have been living in nonstop torture. You've woken up, wandered about your house, and gone back to bed. And every time you've gone to bed, you've had horrible, active, violent nightmares where the FNAF 4 visions are attacking you. And then one day, after 2 years of this, an unknowable amount of time, your father comes through, opens your bedroom door. It's the first time you've seen your father that you can remember in years. And he reaches out to you like, I'm trying to save you, but I need your help. Whatever he says you need to do, you're doing it. So he goes to FNAF 2, and he does this. He does Night 6, I believe. Whatever the God, is it Fritz Smith? It is Fritz Smith. In looking it up, I want to make a note because I almost forgot. The visions in FNAF 2. So this explains the in-between night minigames where Freddy looks right and left and like more things start happening. I think being in the FNAF 2 location, wearing the Freddy mask so frequently, Jeremy is receiving visions from Gabriel. Alone Together explains that when you get possessions, you'll get memories that when a ghost is trying to contact you, you'll get dreams that aren't yours, you'll get memories that aren't yours, and these things will leak into you. I think we're seeing this with those moments, and it's Gabriel trying to reach out to Jeremy because he keeps wearing that Freddy mask, and he's seeing Gabriel gain possession of the Freddy suit. Because this is the Freddy's that is closed in between the original Freddy's and FNAF 2. Like that 1986 time when it's closed and it's just the animatronics waiting around in that restaurant. That's when these visions are taking place. That's why the puppet is there. That's why Golden Freddy is there. They're all there because they are doing... This is like essentially give gifts, give life in first person. I totally forgot to mention that. But yeah, it was Fritz Smith. He goes under the name of Fritz Smith. And the funny thing is, for 2 years, he's been defending himself at FNAF 4. Right? For 2 years. And we haven't gotten to the FNAF 4 gameplay yet. Just keep in mind, we have not gotten to the FNAF 4 gameplay yet. We've gotten to the nightmare chambers that Michael gets put in that his nightmares are based off of. So keep that in mind. But Michael has been experiencing essentially FNAF 4 for 2 years and has been defending himself from FNAF 4 for 2 years, at least. Because this could have even started in 1983, 1984. So at least 2 years by now, possibly 3 or 4. But that's all he's been doing. So although he's not very good at being subtle, and he's not very good at taking apart animatronics, he is damn good at FNAF gameplay. He is the best FNAF game player ever, right? Like that's why, and I think that's literally the in-universe reason for why he survives FNAF 2, and why he survives FNAF 1, and why he almost survives Sister Location, and why he survives FNAF 3, and why he survives FNAF 6. The reason he keeps well, he doesn't survive FNAF 6, but he doesn't get killed by animatronics in FNAF 6. I legitimately think the in-universe reason for why Michael keeps surviving these FNAF games is because he basically was forced to be in a training boot camp in the FNAF 4 testing chambers for years, and that's all he knows. So while Michael is incredible at defending himself, he still gets caught trying to take apart the withered animatronics and is fired. That's why he's fired for tampering with the animatronics and foul odor. The foul odor is the odor from the animatronics, but Fazbear blames him for that. But the tampering part, he literally was trying to take apart the withered animatronics. Doesn't work, gets fired. So when he fails, William's like, I'm sorry, but that was our only shot. The nightmares are going to continue again. And either he just forces him down there, or he just waits for Michael to go to bed, and then when he's asleep, puts him back in the chambers. Like in essence, making Michael think it's his fault for the nightmare chambers that continue to experiment on him. But because of the investigation, the FNAF 2 location is shut down for good, and once again, all the assets are retained by the shareholders. However, as the newspapers tell us, the toy animatronics are deemed a failure and discarded. They are left aside, and the originals are held. This is literally, this is kind of where a lot of my shareholder theory comes from, is because the newspaper literally says Fazbear is holding on to the original animatronics in the hopes for a reorganization, but the toys are being discarded. That is such business speech for the assets are being maintained by the shareholders while we work on the bankruptcy. That's just what that means. But because they are discarding the toys, William is able to get access to those. He can't access the originals yet. The originals are still under the shareholders' control, but the toys were discarded, and the toys have some of the parts of the original animatronics. They have some of those parts. So, William takes those, melts them down, and injects them into the Funtime animatronics, doing sister location experiments. This is where we get the in-between of FNAF 2 and FNAF 1. All right, that was a long one too. That was like a 20-minute writing session. I figured it made more sense for the podcast if instead of talking as I'm typing and you just hear William melts the toy, just take the 10 to 15 minutes, write down all my thoughts, and then go over them with y'all. I think that makes the most sense for a podcast. So that's what I've been doing this episode. Anyway, we're back to an in-between time, right? Because FNAF 2 takes place in 1987, and I think I've been won over on FNAF 1 taking place in 1993. I think I've been won over there. That being said, we need to deal with the in-between time, and FNAF 1 might take place in 1993, but the FNAF 1 location, I believe, opened a bit before then, if the week before is anything to go off of. So 1987, and this is, going into 98 or 88 at this point, but leaning after FNAF 2, William melts down the toys into a new substance that he dubs Remnant. Remnant is specifically the combination of soul energy / memory and metal. It's this combined material that he is studying, and he has been studying. And melting down these toys, he takes that metal and injects it into the Funtime animatronics to try to once again induce possession. And it kind of works. He gets a reaction out of them. They start reacting immediately. But they're almost feral or animal-like. They're twitchy and hard to control. And while Circus Baby is controlled and can speak even, these don't talk much, besides what they're already programmed to. They just act off. Maybe William discovers this in the years of experimenting, or whether he does or not. What William has done is taken 5 victims, split their consciousnesses in half, and took one half of those 5 victims' consciousnesses, melted it into one unit, and then divided it into 3 parts and injected it into vessels. So, whatever he's made is not cognitively there enough to be useful to him, right? He's essentially desecrated their memories into just energy, which we kind of see in the Silver Eyes, right? Specifically the 4th closet, where it's less that he's directly making them, the missing child incident victims, possess animatronics, but it's more so that he's using their energy and their consciousness is loosely following along. And we're kind of seeing this with these fun times where they're not consciously being possessed, which is what he's going for. They're more so just being activated by the soul energy. But because of this, he decides he needs more Remnant, and he needs to know exactly how this works. He needs to learn the secrets of how to make someone cognitively possess something before he's willing to risk Elizabeth's soul or the crying child's soul, right? He has Dave's body in the woods. He believes he has Elizabeth's soul inside of Circus Baby. And until he's able to know exactly how to transfer those, he doesn't want to risk losing those because he knows those are whole souls. At this point, I don't even know if he's trying to save the kids anymore. At this point, I think it's just a matter of, well, I know for a fact that is one whole undisturbed soul. So that's a perfect, that's like a perfect experiment value. That is a non, I can't remember my science words. That is my independent variable that is not going to change. I need to keep this stationary, and I can move all of the other variables around to figure out a good process. And once those variables are set, we'll take our independent variable that we know is solid and see if it works that way. And I think that's why, I think that's more so what he's become at this point, where like maybe you could argue early on he is trying to save his kids in some way, but at this point it's like their souls are undisturbed. So I'm leaving them undisturbed until I know I have a good process. And if I can move their undisturbed soul, maybe I can move my undisturbed soul into an animatronic and give me immortal life. I think that's where his head's at this point. But so he needs more remnant. So he goes to the shareholders again, and he tries to open another Freddy's. But this one's different. FNAF 2 was just, I want access to these guys. I want to be able to observe them and test things on them, so I'll just open something for you. But at this point, he wants the animatronics. He wants to do what they did with the toys, where he brings them to his bunker, melts them down, injects them. So this plan is much less extravagant. No big plans, no big new animatronics. He just wants to run it cheap and make a return on investment. If he can run the place on a shoestring budget with the animatronics they already have, maybe he can make enough to pay back the shareholders for their stake in the company, reclaim the company, and reclaim its assets. I think the whole goal for FNAF 1's restaurant is William just wants to earn enough with the restaurant to pay back the shareholders and reclaim the ownership of these animatronics. For whatever reason, maybe just hope to get out of this damn franchise, the shareholders agree, and we have the FNAF 1 Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. So we're still not at 1993 yet, because I think FNAF 1 probably takes place in 1993, but I think FNAF 1 Freddy Fazbear's is open for a couple years, at least going off of how Ralph talks about it in the week before. So the FNAF 1 location is opened sometime between 87 and 93. My best guess is like 1990 or something like that, a couple years after. We don't know, and frankly, it doesn't matter. Sometime that location is open. And like I mentioned, it is on a shoestring budget. So like I said, it's on a shoestring budget. Barely any money is being used to maintain this place. And that explains why when we're playing FNAF 1, it looks like that, right? Like there's trash everywhere. There's garbage on the walls. There's stains everywhere. It's disgusting. But the only purpose of this restaurant is so William can make enough money to pay the shareholders what they've invested on the place so William can legally claim the animatronics to experiment on. He tried to steal them from FNAF 2. It didn't work. So he's like, I'll just make a good enough business that I can pay back the shareholders, return it to a private company. Because like if you have a public company, that just means that the stakes of your company are owned by other people. So I think the purpose of FNAF 1 is to make enough money so he can buy back the shares of the investors, return their investments, and own the majority of the company, and then make the process of making it private again, and then claiming the assets, right? I think he just wants the animatronics. He just wants to melt them down. But unfortunately for William, he's not a business owner. Several years go by and Freddy's is not doing well. The stigma still lingers around the place, as does its poor hygiene, its acrid smell, it's stinky, it's sticky, people don't like being there, and William isn't able to make enough money to buy back the animatronics. Frankly, he might not even be able to keep the lights on. The bills are piling up, the money is not happening because Freddy's 1 is run down. So once again, like always, William gets impatient and he gets desperate. He needs to try to steal them away again. And it's during this time that the week before takes place, because we're getting close to FNAF 1. And I do think the week before takes place the week before FNAF 1. I think that's pretty obvious. But it's at this point where William's like, all right, I need to steal them again. I'm going to get my fall guy. This time he better not mess up. Oh, Michael, you have one last shot. So again, similar to FNAF 2, he lets Michael out of the nightmare chambers and he's like, hey, I found one more way to try to stop these nightmares. It's a new location, but it's still those robots. If you can disassemble them and steal their metal from me, I might be able to stop your nightmares and save your brother. But you need to be discreet this time. You need to lay low. If you get fired, it's all over. And then we have FNAF 1. Real quick, I forgot to mention this. I think the back room ceiling happens in FNAF 2. I think essentially they see the bloody Spring Bonnie suit and they seal it back there. They're just like, oh, we're not touching that. And they seal that away. Just, I realized I forgot to mention that. Because I'm talking about Follow Me, and the question is always like, does the sealing happen after Follow Me? I think it happens before, and I think this is why. And I just wanted to get that out there. FNAF 1, aka 1993. Yippee! So, again, 1993, I think it's probably where FNAF 1 takes place. What FNAF 1 is, like what is going on. Michael, under the name of Mike Schmidt, takes up the job as night security guard in the hopes of taking apart the animatronics for his father. Once again, William is like, hey, I can save you from the nightmares if you take apart these animatronics and bring me their metal. He tries and survives for a whole week this time, trying to be subtle about it, but ultimately he is still caught trying to disassemble the animatronics and he's promptly fired. This is the gameplay of FNAF 1. That's what we're seeing. And after this whole debacle, the shareholders hear what's going on. They hear that somebody was vandalizing the animatronics and got fired again. The shareholders just close down the FNAF 1 location. They're like, William, you tried. You're not going to return this investment. We'll probably just sell these guys for scrap to reclaim any kind of money. I hope to never see you again. And as always, William gets desperate and impatient and tells Michael that he'll do it. So he knows this is dangerous, and he gives Michael Afton some instructions and goes, hey, if I don't make it back, you need to do this. And gives him those instructions. And then he goes to Freddy's. Freddy's is closed now. He's not going to get fired or arrested, but he could die. So he sneaks into the closed FNAF 1 location, and this is where Follow Me takes place, where he breaks into the safe room that the Spring Bonnie suit is inside, the same safe room that the animatronics are programmed to ignore. The animatronics do not have programming to function in this safe room. Approaching it makes them so confused they start walking away. They cannot function in these safe rooms. They are programmed to avoid them. And William uses that to his advantage, leading them to the safe room one after the other, and when they get confused in their programming, jumps out, turns them off, disassembles them. And one by one this works, and he brings their metal back to the sister location bunker, melting them down and adding them to the Fun Times remnant. And this works night after night after night. But the Fun Times, while getting more aggressive and more reactive with each new remnant injection, they're still not quite listening to him. They're not reacting in the way that's useful to him. He's essentially made wild animals. So William thinks to get the Spring Bonnie suit. It worked in FNAF 2, maybe it'll work now. And he goes back to the FNAF 1 location one last time to get that Spring Bonnie suit. But the spirits are there. The spirits from the original suits that were left at the location. They're still there. And one of them who has not been reclaimed at all, Cassidy, whose full spirit is ready to go, is conscious enough to go after Afton. And this throws him. He's been dealing with possession, but he hasn't seen a ghost before. He doesn't know what they can do to him. But again, he's got the trump card. The Spring Bonnie suit is right there. Put it on and it'll set them in line like it always does. But he puts it on, and it's so damp and old at this point that it activates, killing him inside and turning it to show mode, right? When the spring locks activate, it's not just closing in on it, it's turning him into show mode. That's why the spring locks are activating. So not only does this kill him, but I've had a lot of people ask me, if William opened the safe room, why is he still there for FNAF 3 to find him? Like, everyone has a lot, and I shouldn't say everyone, I'm not the first person, no one's the first person to suggest anything, but a lot of people have always said, the safe room being sealed has to happen after FNAF 1, because William is still there, and he would have left otherwise. But consider, William's biggest weakness in FNAF 3 is the programming of the Spring Bonnie's suit. The Balloon Boy laugh. His suit is programmed to go after it. They mention in the tapes that the Springlock suits, when activated, are programmed to follow the sounds of children and all the suits are programmed to avoid the safe room. They don't know what's in there. They don't know it exists. They can't. So if the Springlocks are activated, he's in show mode. And if the safe room is so confusing to the animatronics that they can't even enter it, I bet you, even though the safe room is open enough for William to get inside, that Springlock suit activation is again his weakness. He's in show mode, and although he can force it to move in show mode, he can't force it to go against its programming, as we see with the Balloon Boy laughter in FNAF 3. So if its programming is in this safe room, it's frozen. It's not going anywhere. It's in the safe room. That's the point of the safe room. So William is forcing and screaming and willing his body to move. But this animatronic can't. Not while it's in the safe room. Which is why it's there for the phone dude in FNAF 3 to eventually find him. And then as for we found something behind a false wall, it's never stated that William burst the door open and made it so easy to go in and out of, right? We just know they were sealed and William now has access to it. It could have just been like a couple bricks that he broke down to fit through, you know what I mean? Like, we don't know. I mean, if you look at Jeff's Pizza, that safe room looks like it was just sealed by putting a vending machine in front of it, right? So this is one of the things that I always have to argue for, because not a lot of people agree with me here, but I'm willing to say that the safe rooms were sealed before FNAF 1, and William broke into it after FNAF 1 to do Follow Me, but because of the programming of the Spring Bonnie suit, he couldn't leave anyway until he was retrieved by Phone Dude and FNAF 3. So, what else is going on in this moment? The missing child incident victims, right? William dies. The missing child incident victims fade. Even the character encyclopedia says they find peace. They can't. Half their souls aren't there. Character encyclopedia is also hit or miss with how trustworthy it is. It also mentions Charlotte stays around because she can sense William's still there somewhere. So I propose that Charlotte and Cassidy stay. Charlotte, as the puppet who has not been desecrated yet, stays to keep an eye on William, and Cassidy returns to the Golden Freddy suit, staying to keep an eye on William. The other missing child incident victims, though, their souls are split up. They feel unwell because of this, like the crying child. But unlike the crying child, all of their souls have been conglomerated to one location. And these books often refer to Remnant having like a magnetic quality. Remnant having this like seek out yourself quality to it. Like Remnant finds other Remnant and amasses. So I'm willing to make the claim that the missing child incident victims go to find the other half of their souls and find the sister location experiments and combine with the fun times, which is why when we see them in sister location, they are so aggressive. They are beyond aggressive because all of them, while mixed up and jumbled and messed up, is there, which then allows for molten MCI, which we'll get to. At the same time, Michael Afton at home for an unknown amount of time. Casey, stop. Casey likes to try to knock down my monitor, and it's really annoying. Casey, really? It's my camera, you asshole. It's going to ruin the whole recording. After enough time has passed, Michael's like, Dad gave me instructions. If he doesn't come back, and he hasn't come back, I guess I got to go do these instructions. And he goes down to the sister location bunker. Not necessarily in 93, but sometime after FNAF 1. So sometime in this loose space. But at this point, the recording is almost an hour 20. And I'm sure like half of that is writing, which means we're probably around 40 to 45 minutes. I don't know. I'll find out in post. And if it's really too short, I'll record questions. But I think this just might be where we ended today. So sorry for no questions, but these timeline episodes take a long time. But hey, we got through FNAF 2 and FNAF 1 in one video. So hey, that's pretty good. If you have, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments and even the email on the timeline as it's shaping up so far. Because I think the next episode is going to be a lot less controversial. These first 2 episodes of the timeline are where a lot of people disagree. But I'd love to hear your thoughts, like I said, in the comments or in the email at freddyfazbearpizzapodcast@gmail.com. But yeah, thank you for watching the Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast, where the pizza abilities are endless. We hope to enjoy your future patronage. Bye-bye for now.